Mayday here. 782, we have a smoke in the cabin.
Yeah, 782, attack, 118.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Galactic Terrors for November 2024. I'm Jim Chambers, and with me tonight is...
Carol Gyzander. Hi, everybody.
Hope everyone is doing well, and wherever you live, if you're getting the nice fall weather we're having in New York all of a sudden, I hope you're enjoying it. This is the online reading series that scours the known universe for scary stories, strange tales, weird horror, and all sorts of literary oddities from the most imaginative authors writing in a variety of fascinating genres. And we bring this out to you every second Thursday of the month via YouTube and occasionally Facebook, which has been fussy lately and being difficult because that's how Facebook works. But if you don't want to miss our future broadcast, you can click like and subscribe below on YouTube and make sure that you follow what's coming up. And even better, what do we have, Carol?
Even better, we've got a nifty newsletter. Is that what you mean?
I do, yes.
I try not to spam people, even though I have a Southern mama who used to cook spam as breakfast dishes. I don't believe in spam in your email box. So we send 1 or 2 newsletters a month telling you about what's coming up.
Just enough so that you don't miss our upcoming sessions.
Yes.
And tonight we have a great one with 3 amazing readers. We welcome tonight Jonathan Lees, N.B. Turner, and Maurice Broaddus. We'll be bringing you each one of them with their story in just a few minutes. We'll get started, but I think there's some interesting news to share before we jump in, isn't there?
Yes, well, there's a couple things in the local area. We're in the New York City and New York State area. I'm actually in the New Jersey suburbs. But if you're near New York City, I'd love to have you come join us on Sunday, December 8th from 6 to 9 p.m. That's at the Shade Bar in New York City in Greenwich Village for some ghostly tales and holiday horrors. We're actually going to be doing some live readings as well as our online show. And that's at 241 Sullivan Street in New York City. And we have a Facebook event we set up for that, and we'll share that in a few minutes. So love to have you join us for that. And we also have several New York chapter members who are going to be appearing at PhilCon, Science Fiction and Fantasy Convention. That's in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, which is right outside of Philly. And that's the weekend before Thanksgiving, November 22 through 24. So bunch of folks will be there. It's a fun convention, and if you're nearby, I'd love to have you stop in. It'd be cool.
Yeah, PhilCon is always a fun time.
Yeah. You know, Jim, you did mention that we've got the fall season going, but, you know, the other thing we have is it's ludicrously dry here. It hasn't rained in over 35 days in measurable rain. And New Jersey is on fire. You know, there were oodles of wildfires going, and one of them has been going between the New York and New Jersey border that they can't get put out because there's nothing there. It's a very difficult to reach location. So yay.
Yeah, we've had fires on Long Island too, and a fire in Prospect Park in Brooklyn. All of these brush fires. It has been exceptionally dry, and hopefully that will be under control, and we'll get some rain soon.
Yeah, I hope so. But I'm wearing my glasses because I had to go out and clear the leaves off my lawn, which threw up so much dust and dirt that my eyes said, no, I'm not happy with this. So that's one of the reasons I mention it. But yeah, I only like fires in the places they should happen, as Kate says. You know?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not used to them around. They're pretty rare. We've had some brush fires out here occasionally, but this has been exceptional.
Yeah, it's dry so deep into the dirt, way down there. There's something else we can think about. This is November, and many people celebrate Thanksgiving this month. So I just did something kind of fun, and I took a look for, what are some fun books in case you wanted to read some nice Thanksgiving horror. And apparently Norman Partridge has a Bram Stoker award-winning novel called Dark Harvest from 2007. It was made into a movie, and it sounds sort of like Halloween moving into the November timeframe. That sounds cool. But one other title that I particularly liked was Zombie Turkeys: Who Will Be Eaten on Thanksgiving? It's a book by Andy Zack, and I thought, okay, that sounds perfect. Yeah, that's definitely Thanksgiving horror. So I think those sound like fun.
But it amazed me that it took until last year, or last year or the year before we finally got a Thanksgiving-themed slasher movie.
Yes.
Somebody would have been on top of that decades ago. But
well, we should all stream it again this year, right?
Yes. And Teal has a great question for anyone who is in our vicinity. What about tiny raccoons? Tiny raccoons are... they don't make good pets, as the great state of New York has recently reminded us, rather gruesomely. But the Tiny Raccoon Bookstore in Sayville on Long Island will be hosting a reading this Saturday featuring me, Carol, Teal James Glenn, Frank Raymond Michaels, and Mark Abbott.
Yeah.
Read from the Chaos Clock, an anthology that mashes up cosmic horror and steampunk.
Yeah. So I put a link to there's a Facebook event for it there, and I put that in the chat too. So how can you beat steampunk cosmic horror?
It was a fun assignment, as I think the publisher described it. It's H.G. Wells meets H.P. Lovecraft. Probably more accurate to say Jules Verne meets H.P. Lovecraft. But
okay, yes, that works well. Yeah.
But why don't we go ahead and get started with the readings?
I think that's a great idea.
All right. So our first reader tonight is Jonathan Lees. Jonathan originally hails from a shuttered mill town in New England and now can often be spotted slinking around the barrens of New Jersey. His darker thoughts have escaped through stories such as They Are Still Out There, You Just Can't See Them Anymore, in the Shirley Jackson Award-winning anthology, The Hideous Book of Hidden Horrors. It Comes in Waves from the Shirley Jackson and World Fantasy Award nominated Other Terrors, an inclusive anthology by editors Rena Mason and Vince Liaguno. And Power Out, Wind Howling from Even in the Grave, which received an honorable mention in Ellen Datlow's The Best Horror, Volume 15. And you can find out more about Jonathan on his Linktree. It's linktr.ee/Jonathan Lees. Let's welcome Jonathan.
Hey, everyone. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Carol. Really glad to be here to read for the first time my story Pop from the anthology Fear of Clowns that was edited by Kenneth Kane, published by Kevin Kangas. And there's a lot of people in here I love, from Jonathan Jans to Red Legault, AC Wise, Adam Caesar, V. Castro, Haley Piper, Rachel Harrison, Clay McLeod Chapman. This is a good one, people. Anyways, here we go. This is Pop. A child squeals in joy as the balloon is twisted. It keeps squeaking until it bursts. The balloon, not the child. There's something wrong with its eyes. The clown, not the child. Too many distractions here. Too damn bright outside to tell exactly what is wrong with them. Another kid screams, and more streamers fly and flutter and die on the lawn. The clown hangs from the tree, and the little ones circle it with sticks and bats. Its face has lost its smile. Its costume body ragged, and tumbleweeds of orange hair race over its eyes, so I can no longer see what they're looking at. 3 of the girls take turns smashing the clown's body with such swift blows its limbs fold in unnatural directions. Our daughter's face twists up until wrinkles of rage age her at least 30 years. She swings the bat, unleashing a guttural shout, and cracks it right in the stomach. I often wondered what a clown looked like without makeup when I was young. Is it the same visage without the grease paint? Its cheeks and mouth stretched tight into exaggerated grins and grimaces? Or does it settle into malaise we're used to seeing on nearly every human who doesn't have a camera trained on them? When I was as vulnerable as these kids, everything was supposed to harm us. Satanists with curved knives, perfected for the pudge of a toddler's belly, heavy metal anthems run backward, or in the case of rap music, forward, turning us against everything so-called sane in society. Art that would pervert all of our sensibilities to the point that we spend our lives destitute. Then there was the story that all of us heard, just one of the many children in peril stories we were forced to endure growing up in Massachusetts in the 80s. The one about the white van and what happened to anyone dumb enough to go near it. Some said it rode at night. Others said it boldly faced the day, crawling through our neighborhoods like a spider with sinister intent for each God-given leg. Its existence and purpose became subjective. Resting behind the rusted double doors were syphilitic acid dealers, clammy-handed pedophiles. Some say it acted as a Pied Piper, tinkling ice cream truck melodies until children got too close to its doors and were snatched out of their untied sneakers. I played baseball at the Carl Thomas Park, and with just about as much enthusiasm as one can muster with a sport you're really not into. I was a pretty good pitcher on our Little League's variation of the Yankees. Now, if you wanted to have your child face the wrath of every shit-faced parent in the bleachers, it was putting the infamous blue and white cap on a kid sitting 20 miles north of Boston. After the game ended, we won. My stomach full of orange slices and Italian ice, I moped up the same steep hill I would sled down in the winter months. That's how I started my short journey home, eager to stop by the old penny candy shop for some root beer barrels. I love them so much, especially partially dissolved to the point where that hole on the surface forms and its sharp edges cut into the softest parts of your mouth. For some reason, even pain felt good back then. Only moments as I started to climb the hill, I shit you not, a white van crept down Marblehead Street. I paused, and the van did as well. It idled. I stared for longer than seemed possible. A silhouette in the passenger seat leaned out of the shadows, pushing its face, shockingly pale, with a mouth too big to be normal, against the filmy glass. A clown. Not a bozo the clown, although his energy was frightening, and not a Willie Whistle, he unnerved me too, but something about its eyes. I could tell whatever was behind them was a problem. Its makeup wasn't professional, just pale and dusty instead of perfect and pancaked, as if its skin was leached of all color. Instead of a periwinkle blue star over its eyes, it looked like my knees after practice, deep purple and blues. And its mouth, it looked like the girls in the magazine we found by the train tracks, lips smeared from all the dirty business. It winked at me. Every stitch of my already too tight baseball uniform constricted. I stopped breathing, and all I thought of were a montage of images half-formed, cut before they were resolved. My face surrounded by balloons, the chemical odor of latex lining my nostrils. Cold, wet mouths slid across my forehead, cheeks, and chin as they suffocated me. I was in a dank basement, surrounded by misshapen, naked bodies painted the same as their face. They came into the light, pried open my mouth, put something on my tongue. I was on all fours with cartoon hands that twisted my arms and legs and head until I couldn't breathe, and right before I blacked out, I could almost hear the pop. It's amazing how fast one can run when death slows down to stare at you. I was damned if I was going to become another statistic with my own black and white flyer posted on every fucking Dunkin' Donuts storefront. Mm-mm. I took one quick look to see if any of the other parents or kids lingered behind, someone I could cling on to in hopes that the van would just keep moving. Finding no one I knew, I kept my eyes locked on that creeping van and ran. I was too far from any familiar house that I could just burst into their living room, despite this myth that everyone in a small town knows each other. I kept looking over my shoulder and noted the van took a right at the edge of the park, a turn that could wrap around and meet me at any corner leading to my house. The second it was fully out of sight, I stopped and ducked into a stranger's yard and climbed into a decrepit shell of a car that smelled of desiccated newspaper and piss. I waited for what felt like eternity until I stopped breathing and the van passed by again, unable to see me within the rusted metal frame, but it still slowed down as if it sensed me there. I had to pee. I had to vomit. I did neither. I just closed my eyes until the motor sputtered away, fading out. Hours after the girls finally sweated the sugar out of their skin and lay face down in their pillows, I can't sleep. I pull the blanket closer to my mouth and chew on its edges while looking into the darker parts of the room. I hear something like when a razor slides down my chin, a scraping. I swing out of bed, my husband obscured in blankets, and I go to the window, wiping away some summer stickiness with my shirt, and I see the clown, still hanging, and a tune real low, structured as if a children's melody were being played by boneless fingers collapsing on a broken piano keys. The rope around its neck scratches against the makeshift gallows we built. The moon chose to spotlight the swinging body, its skin iridescent, glowing. I still can't see its eyes, and the chill I felt in that rusted old automobile, hiding from the van, shimmies back up my neck, and my skeleton won't stop dancing. Then I hear it. A long-forgotten verse reverberates in my brain. Without the makeup, they look like you and me, yet filled with rot we might never see. So they change their face and stand and stare. A laugh so cold, it's bound to scare. With wilder eyes and grins too big, they're waiting for you. There's graves to dig. I think I'll end it there. There's more, but I'm going to leave you hanging.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I'm not going outside for good long while. Thank you for sharing your words, Jonathan.
Yeah,
oh my
thank
gosh.
you.
That was amazing. I've heard this story before, but hearing you read it makes it like even so much wow. Yeah.
Yeah, was this even in our group? I think I submitted this to our group for critique.
Yeah. This is
It
great.
made it.
Oh, it's great. No, it's terrific. You know, I am really struck. There's a meme that I'm sure you've seen, and it's a picture of a white van and somebody spray painted on it "free candy." And every time I see that, it's like,
This is a real urban legend in New England. The white van, I think it's actually available in some New England urban legend books. And the white van was a serious story. And
wow.
Obviously I took liberties, but this is based on something that actually happened.
Wow.
Yeah.
Kind of so were you a baseball player?
Yeah, I was. And I played for the Yankees, which is hilarious.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah.
Torture.
This is a whole anthology of clown stories, right?
Yeah.
And so what was the basic guideline? Just that it has to have a clown, or did it need to look at a particular aspect of clowns, or what did they ask for this? Do you remember?
They basically knew what was out there already and just really tried to divert people away from doing too many, with Terrifier being one of the biggest box office successes for an independent film. We didn't want like 25 stories that were like that. So Kevin Canvas was Kevin made a film called Fear of Clowns back in the day, which I believe is available on Tubi. Real low budget thriller shot in Maryland. And
sounds perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so he's been inundated with clowns his whole life. He knew that there were just going to be a ton of the same old, so he wanted something really personal, something different from everyone. And I think, I swear to God, they delivered. This book is stacked. Even if you like, clown horror is not for you, I swear to God, all these stories are killer.
Wow. Yeah. And yours, you put such a personal feel in there. It's like I was like sitting on the edge of my chair, like kind of holding on, saying, don't look at him. Yeah. That's cool. Oh wow. So we do have some feedback. Keeper Reaper Productions said that was a great film. And
Kevin
the ending,
another name?
and the ending was really solid. Okay. That's cool. So, what is your personal take on clowns? I mean, do you go to the circus? Do you enjoy them? Do you carry their way?
Well, I think I aged myself by making a nod to Bozo the Clown and Willy Winky, or I don't even remember his name now. I don't even know if I put it right in the story, but Willy Winky. No, I was terrified of clowns. For no good reason either. Circuses were a big thing when I was growing up. So I just feel like the imagery of clowns was everywhere. Plus it was on, the bad acid stories. They were often featured in, we were, prime time for Satanic Panic. And I think every image from horror or anything that could cause fright was used to terrorize people back then. So I feel like clowns were very prevalent.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And, this is something I'm wondering. Kate had a thought from your story without the makeup shutter. No. Yeah. You got to stop doing that. Look at me. You got to stop it.
Just imagine like in the dark of your room, just seeing that face minus the makeup. No thanks.
Oh, no. Do you think that's one of the reasons why clowns are scary? That there is makeup and you can't tell what they're like or what they're really feeling? Or what do
I think, absolutely. I have a problem with anyone that puts on a mask, whether it's you can't see their face on social media or, up right in front of you. There's just this feeling that if you're promoting something, an emotion that is so strong and exaggerated, there's something else going on behind it.
It's a front. Yeah.
That is frightening.
Okay. Yeah. I wrote one of those pieces for the HWA when they had the month-long thing about, Halloween a year or so ago. And one of the things I pointed out is that a lot of the game parks, like the big circus.
Big Top?
No, not Big Top. Like Great Adventure, where you go and it's got rides and it's a whole big place. But when they do things at Halloween and they have fun events, people come in costume, but they don't let anybody wear a mask because it hides how you act and it lets you do things that you wouldn't do if you were actually being seen.
Absolutely true.
Yeah.
It's frightening. I think Jack asked if I was thinking of Willy Whistle, and yes, that's how I wrote it in the story.
Okay.
Bozo the Clown and Willy Whistle. Yep. Thanks.
Yes.
Jack.
Yes. Thank you, Jack. Appreciate it. Yeah, Jim. Yeah. Thank you, Jim. Amusement parks. You know how when you start talking, words just don't come out? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm amazed that I could even like read through that and still talk to you. I'm like shivering.
Yeah. No, that was awesome. And hearing you read it was really terrific too.
Thank you.
Now, I have a question that I've been dying to ask you. You also are really big into film in general. And short films. And for Horror Writers Association for the StokerCon convention, you also run the Final Frame short film contest. I'm probably not saying the exact right name of it right, but what do you feel like your interest in films has affected the way you write stories, or has your writing affected the type of films you like? Is there any relationship between those?
That's a good one. I absolutely feel like film structures, from experimental film even to the most, regular film that you'll see in the multiplex, have all influenced me in some fashion. When I write, though, I feel like everything I learn goes right out the window. And if I sit there thinking about it too much,
yes,
I'll be trapped. And the only reason I've published stories to date is because I had to teach myself not to get trapped. So thinking of anything from a book I just read or a movie I just saw just has to be ejected. And then I can focus on the story at hand.
Yes. Yes.
But absolutely. I mean, visuals are so important to me. I've spent my life taking pictures. I was a video director for Complex and Tidal. So, you know, like images have played a very important part of my life. But when I'm putting them on the page, I really try to drum up everything I was ever scared of, everything that still makes me nervous to this day, which is sad. I'm old. I still shiver in bed.
That's quite fair, but you know, you have a couple cats, so maybe they will help keep you warm. So
Oh, they doing shit. No.
no,
Oh, I lost you.
I still see you.
Carol, are you back?
Yes. Did I flip out for a
here we
second?
go.
Oh, okay.
Just for a second. Yes. All right. It
Yeah.
was that shivery cold. All right. I'll
I was just putting my clown face on. You know, that's what it was. Yeah.
It worked.
Yeah. It's scary. Yeah. And can you just show us your shirt because everybody can see the eyes of it? Tell us who's on your shirt here.
So this is a still from the film Martin by George Romero. Excellent film if you haven't seen it. I think it's his best, but I know people will take me down for that.
That's awesome. Well, listen, thank you so much for joining us and reading that story. It was fabulous on paper, but even so much better when you read it. I mean, that was just freaking awesome. So
thank you. And
so
thanks
much.
to everyone who's watching. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for coming in. What I'd love to do is introduce our next reader. N.B. Turner is a writer currently living in Nebraska, remembering and trying to honor his time growing up along the Great Lakes. He's published short fiction in Hoosier Noir, Shotgun Honey, and Rockin' a Hard Place magazine, as well as poetry in The Daily Drunk and Punk Noir. You can follow him on Twitter at NBTurner15. Nate?
Yeah, thank you for the introduction, and thank you, Jonathan, for the great story. So what I'm going to read to you today is actually a little bit of a piece that isn't published anywhere. It's something that I've been workshopping a little bit. But as Carol said, I grew up along the Great Lakes, and that's kind of what has inspired this horror story. And I wanted to do something a little bit different because this is a horror show, so I wanted to do something a little bit different than a lot of the crime fiction that I've done in the past. So this is called The God of the Inland Sea. The Corporate was barely out of port when the memories started coming back. On land, I tried to drown them at the bars, but to no avail. Once I was on the water between Illinois, Michigan, and Indiana, every tilt of the ship felt like a tilt of the Earth's axis. Every groan in the great metal body sounded like the entire hull was about to fracture. Chains rattled, the engine roared, and the Corvette's horn blared into the distance, announcing its entrance to the inland sea. We were traveling light up to Superior after offloading iron ore in Burns Harbor. The crew scurried over the 1,000-foot deck to close every hatch and resecure everything that could move. Storms in the lake were always rough. Unloaded, we could travel a bit faster, but the waves would be merciless on us. I prayed to any god who would listen that we had good weather all the way to Superior. It had been 2 months since the Admiral Carver had sunk into the depths of Lake Michigan. I was a lone survivor of that wreck. With an empty bank account and a nearing eviction hounding at me, I got lucky, if you could call it that, to find that the Corporate was down a man and heading out of port soon. The other deckhands tried to keep some distance from me as they worked. Understandable. Not only was I new to the ship, but I knew that the stories of the Carver's wreck had crept around the bars. Shipwreck survivors might consider themselves lucky. Crews on any other ships they work don't. The fact that no one knew exactly why the Carver had sunk only made it worse for me. Rumors had gotten around. They always did. A storm had barreled across the lake that night, and some talked about a drunk captain or faulty maps causing the wreck. But with the Admiral Carver's broken hull and black box data unrecovered from the bottom of Lake Michigan, one story had seeded deep throughout the ship crews. Carver had been headed for port in Muskegon, an hour before she sank, trying to seek shelter. Her signal had been spotted 10 miles from Safe Harbor before she turned around and headed back out into the expanse, with the night swallowing the ship and all the pleas for help coming over the radio. The Coast Guard rescued me in a raft almost 50 miles from the Carver's last recorded location, aided by dumb luck and a flare gun I had shot off without knowing whether or not they could see me. After that, I tried anything to avoid going back on the water. But when your only job, and the only job your family has ever known, is working on cargo ships, it's next to impossible to get good money doing anything else. After we were underway and the sun had sunk below the water, some of the deckhands caught me in the mess. One, a machinist named Frank, had asked me where I had come from. Michigan City, I said. Dad worked this job. I took a spot at the company when I was 18. How long you been working? 10 years. And you? I cut him off. If you want to ask about what happened, just ask. I wouldn't say the Carver's name on board. Bad luck. And even thinking of that ship gave me a headache. But I'd take a few minutes of throbbing pain to get rid of some of their suspicions. What happened to your last ship? Frank asked. A small tendril of tobacco juice slithered from his mouth down the grooves of a plastic bottle. The mix of mint and tobacco on Frank's breath burned my nostrils. I wish I knew. I woke up with the ship taking on water. I reached into one of the cabinets and grabbed a small pack of crackers. They were stale, grinding in my mouth with a texture of chalk and even less flavor. But eating them gave me something to fill the silence. A slight pain sparked at the base of my neck as I chewed. Frank spit another stream of dip juice into the bottle. It sounded like he was crushing a bug between his lips. I could tell that they weren't satisfied with the answer. I rubbed the back of my neck and continued. There was an explosion. I didn't see where it came from. I don't know what happened to the rest of the crew. I slipped the last cracker into my mouth, waiting for Frank to speak. He seemed the only one curious enough to open his mouth. Frank spit again, then shrugged. Fair enough, he said. I left the mess and no one followed me. I made my way up to the deck, walking through the corridors, pipes overhead, sometimes rattling like someone was skipping a stone inside them, fluorescent lights glaring in my eyes. Gulls cawed in the night sky, some close and some in the distance. One or two landed on the placid waters far from the ship. Summertime on the lake. Reminds me of when I was a kid. The waters were wide and calm and held endless opportunities, pristine as the blue waters of the Caribbean I'd read about in pirate stories. Now, they looked black, ready to crush anything they could swallow. I knew what was beneath the surface, hidden in the bottomless pit of Michigan. The voices began whispering my name. They brought a feeling of something crawling under my skin, like a roach making its way across a corpse. Jameson. Jameson. I reminded myself to break a glass on the floor before I went to bed tonight. Back home, after learning I sleepwalked, I'd scatter Legos on the floor. Even asleep, they hurt like hell to step on. They woke me up, kept me from going places or doing stuff in my sleep. Those voices had a way of bringing on strange things. Throughout the first month after I was rescued, I'd wake up in my apartment and find drawings scattered across the floor. Pages and pages of symbols I didn't understand, words I didn't remember writing, and always the echo of those voices, heard like the last distant notes of a song I never wanted to hear, but heard nonetheless. Sometimes the voice was deep and booming, sometimes softer, like my mother and father. No matter how different they sounded, they all spoke with one mind, and it was always worse near the lake. This job felt like a prison with the voices rattling around in my skull, but I had no choice, nowhere else to go. I was just like the gulls. I could never be too far from the water. The ship's bones creaked and popped like an old man waking up. She was turning slightly, trying to keep a smooth course towards its final harbor up north. I stood closer to the edge of the ship's deck, looking just over the side of the waves below. The behemoth moved through the water, sending wakes out into the distance big enough to swamp smaller boats, just moving this thing with more force than anyone on land could fathom. The edge of Corbett's wake was churning white, even in the darkness. Then came the glow beneath the surface. That infernal orange, like an eye looking up from the depths. Not again, I thought. Not again, damn it. A loud pop rang out from the metal body, and I turned away from the water. I expected to see the ship cracking in half, but there was nothing. Yet. I went back below deck for some shut-eye. I wasn't on duty until morning, and I needed sleep if I was going to be useful to anyone. Ever since surviving the Carver, I learned to hate my dreams. Tonight I saw my old shipmates, the Carver's captain, my dead parents. They spoke strangely, telling me to do things I didn't understand, always speaking for one thing, but with many voices. She demands more, they said. She won't let you go. Do as she wants, now! I startled awake, moving so fast I almost jumped off the bed. My chest was covered in sweat, the room was still dark, and my watch said 0300. She, that creature in the lake, she had no name, but she was there, waiting. I didn't know where she'd come from or how long she'd been there, but she was something terrible. She only cares if you do as she wants, I thought. I was scared to sleep the 3 hours remaining until my shift, more scared of being useless on deck, even needing another crewmate, and at risk of running behind schedule. The company had just barely convinced the corvette's captain to take me on. All thought it was bad luck to have a survivor on board, but I'd gotten the post and didn't want to get fired. My only choice was to try and keep my head together and keep my job. I curled into a ball on the mattress and tried to doze for a bit longer. Around 0500, I woke up again. More dreams, worse ones. Dreams of the Carver's wreck. I dreamed of things I didn't remember in the daylight. A sound of a bomb going off, flames rolling out of the blast and going through the walls. One of my shipmates cut in half from his scalp to his groin. The half I saw was a mix of charred flesh and exposed muscle. His femur had snapped sharply through the muscle, jagged as a branch struck by lightning. He was still breathing when I found him in the dream. Each breath looked painful and sounded horrific, like an accordion that couldn't play a note but kept drawing air. That wasn't real, I thought. It couldn't have been. I never saw that. Shaking and smacking my head did nothing to knock the images loose. Over my protest that it was nothing but a dream, I heard a voice saying, "No, remember." I put on my shoes, protecting my feet from the broken glass I'd scattered, and went to the mess. I needed coffee. It was close to the end of the night shift. 3 folks dressed in oil-marked coveralls sat at the table, bolted into the floor. When they saw me walk in, 2 stood up and left. The only one left was an electrician with gray hair and a beard shielding half his face from the elements. I filled the steel coffee pot and started brewing. Needling pain began to creep from the base of my skull up to the crown of my head, slithering forward towards my eyes. I searched the drawers and found a bottle of Tylenol. I popped 2 in my mouth and tilted my head to drink from the running faucet. "You the new boy?" the old man said. "Yeah, I'm the new boy." Iron in the water left my mouth feeling like someone sprinkled rust over my tongue. "You aren't going to leave?" "Why would I?" "Same reason everyone else does. Unless they think that they can get some story, they just avoid me." "Oh yeah, you were on the Carver." I was shocked to hear him say the ship's name. I grabbed the coffee pot, heat radiating onto my knuckles, and poured myself a large mug before sitting across from the old man. "You really aren't afraid," I said, bringing the mug to my lips. It almost burned my tongue on the first sip. Quick cooling breath shot from my mouth, sending ripples across the mug. The man spoke as I waited for the coffee to cool. "I've seen worse things than shipwrecks." "Like what?" I took a sip. I felt almost no pain as I drank the coffee down in large gulps. Anything to ward off the fatigue advancing on me like a midwinter storm, freezing everything that moves. "My family's been on the lake for centuries," the old man said. "My father, my brothers, and I have been shipping cargo for decades. Ever since they opened the St. Lawrence Seaway in the 50s. We remember what it was like then. And something's changed. That seaway brought something here. Yeah, zebra mussels and invasive fish." I drained the mug. I never knew the lake before the seaway, but my father and grandfather told me similar stories. The beaches were cleaner, the water was calmer. It was cruel in the winter. Snowstorms formed off the lake with little warning, but the summer always seemed pristine. Summer was my father's delight, and he always wanted me to go out on the water with him. He taught me to love the lakes and made me want to work them like he did. The old man shook his head. He spoke like he was trying to hide his words from spying ears. "Something else. Something bigger. Something worse. Something evil's in the water now." That night on the Carver, the way the ship moved and rocked from bow to stern, it felt like a child trying to flip a toy boat end over end. "Nature's a harsh thing," I told the old man. "It feels evil when it hits you hard enough." "It didn't always, but I reckon you've probably seen it closer than others." I didn't say anything, but my skin rose in goosebumps like someone had run an ice cube down my back. The voices, those eyes, there was someone wicked in the waters. That creature, that cruel god in the lake. She was the one in my dreams speaking out of so many different mouths. She had dragged the carver off its course and away from the harbor. That night, I had seen the harbor lights flickering in front of us, beyond the waves and through the rain, but in sight. We were headed for shelter, straight as we could through the watery mountains forming across Lake Michigan's surface, and something had wrapped over the ship's bow, flesh and slime thick as an anchor chain, but moving like a python around its prey. Then came another one across the deck, strangling the ship. They gripped the bow hard enough to bend the double steel hull. A strong yank took us away from the harbor and back out into the open water. The storm hid every shore, leaving only the darkness and whatever creature had those disgusting tentacles. That was the first time I heard her voice. Her voice, calling out to me. Come here. Come to me, Jameson. That was the voice I heard last night. She wanted this ship. The old man was right. I had been too close to something in the water, and now it felt like he could order me around. I feared it might be able to. Thanks for the story, I told the old man. I need to get on deck. Be careful, he said. Always am. The decks were calm this early, as one shift was ending and another beginning. The lack of cargo allowed the Corvette to travel at speed. Scraps of land came into view and then disappeared like mirages in the desert. The last beam of the lighthouse's lamp swung across the water before being swallowed by the sunlight. Gulls called over the placid surface, sounding like bike horns in a church. It was all backlit by a sky and sun red as a traffic light, begging every ship on the water to stop, just like the day the Carver sank. Red sky and morning, I said to myself. Damn it. And I think I'll stop there. I think I might have gone over my time.
Nate, thank you so much.
Yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Yeah, it's a little bit rough, and I've been trying to shop that around, but yeah, it's a story that I really loved writing, and I really hope that it finds a good home. But yeah, thank you for listening.
Yeah, it's terrific. It's a really cool piece with a lot of mood and some great characterization. And I'm kind of wondering, so how big of a jump is it for you to go from writing crime to horror?
A little bit bigger of a jump than I would have realized when I first started, because when I first started, I was doing sci-fi, and then after I started doing crime and it got a little bit more, got a little bit easier, then I decided to jump back into horror because there were some things that I wanted to talk about, or that I was having enough nightmares to the point where I was like, I got to use some of this, otherwise it's just going to waste. But yeah, that was like the first horror story I'd written in a very long time. And again, it was inspired by just like learning about the history of the Great Lakes. And so there was a lot to it. So yeah.
Well, we had an interesting comment from Creeper Reaper Productions. There isn't enough nautical horror these days.
Yeah.
And I mean, it is kind of a classic subgenre of horror. And what I found really cool about, one of the things I found really cool about your story is that it is set on the Great Lakes. It's not, out on the Atlantic or the Pacific in the vast, endless seas. Mm-hmm. So I think for me, it gives it a bit of a different tone, a different feel. What was your goal in choosing that setting?
So kind of the reason that I kind of talked about it, or that I chose that, is like, one, I'm a little bit familiar with it. Like Burns Harbor was a town near where I grew up. Like the port of Indiana is actually not too far from the town where I grew up. Michigan City is where I had a scout troop. I had a scoutmaster that actually worked on the lakes. And so it was a familiar setting to me, but also there's always been so much that happened on the lakes, whether I was going to college along Lake Erie or living along Lake Michigan. They just always seemed so absolutely vast in a way that didn't seem possible for something that was in the middle of a continent. And so the fact that that existed, and then also just the feeling of there's something there that we don't fully understand. Like there's a rumor that Jimmy Hoffa's body is at the body of Lake Michigan. And it's because it's so deep that no one has gone down to dredge it.
Yeah.
And then there's also like so many shipwrecks in Lake Erie. Mm-hmm. There's just so much there that is so rich from mining. And then also the fact that the St. Lawrence Seaway actually did bring invasive species into the Great Lakes because it's coming from the Atlantic and there's a bunch of stuff in bilge water and it's wrecking the ecology of the lakes. I was like, well, let's play with this. Let's see if we can make this into like a bigger monster that actually kills people as opposed to, oh, this is just a species that's slowly wreaking havoc. I'm like, no, we needed something to tear apart ships.
But you've got that, little sub theme of ecological or environmental horror to spice it up too.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Very cool. Yeah, we have this I think was kind of what I was trying to put my finger on, going back to Creeper Reaper production, that the Great Lakes make it feel grittier and more claustrophobic in a way because the lake, on a lake, it feels like it should be safer than out on the open sea. And so the danger seems that much more shocking, perhaps.
Yeah, and one thing I will say, Creeper Reaper Productions, he's actually a good friend of mine. He actually makes independent horror films, but he and I were in college together, so he understands a little bit of like what I'm talking about with the Great Lakes. But yeah, that fact that it should feel safer, but it never does.
Yeah.
And so that's what I kind of wanted to dig into that, and I just love Cthulhu as like an actual monster. So being able to play with that was even more fun to me.
So as somebody who writes in different genres, what do you see as the biggest differentiation between horror and crime? Because I think there's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of crime fiction that is so dark it strays into horror, maybe not supernatural horror, but psychological horror and other kinds of horror. What would you say is, what makes a crime story versus a psychological horror story that involves crime? Or is there no difference?
It's a very thin line. And I would say for psychological horror is that it delves a little bit deeper into the mind of whoever's supposed to be horrific, like Bloom by Delia S. Dawson. That digs into the mental status and like the mental reasoning of a serial killer a lot more than I think like some crime stories would. There's actually a story in an anthology called Bishop Ryder Lives that was done by Laurel Hightower. And that story goes straight to horror because of how gory it absolutely is. And because of just it's almost like kind of nihilism. Like for me, crime almost has like a little bit of optimism about it, but like horror tends to lean a little bit more towards the nihilism and the hopelessness of it. And like horror horror very often has a supernatural element. So for me, it's like that supernatural element is the thing that pushes it over the line into horror from crime. But the line is very, very thin.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you feel like any one of the genres you've written in, science fiction, horror, or crime, is sort of like your home base that you go back to again and again, or are you really more comfortable jumping around?
I would say I'm comfortable jumping around. I'm kind of getting back into like writing in multiple genres, and I would love to dive more into science fiction just because I've been reading a lot of it recently, and so there's a lot more that kind of like comes to mind. But yeah, I'm like pretty comfortable in all of them. Like crime's home because that was like where I first started getting kind of paid. But my heart kind of leans a little bit more towards sci-fi and horror, and I just find them fun to write. I just find them like really enjoyable to kind of deal with a little bit more of like what happens if we suspend reality for just a little bit more.
Right.
Yeah. But
so we've had a great introduction to your horror writing. Where should people go if they want to read some crime fiction?
So I've got stories, as Carol was saying, I've got stories in Shotgun Honey. Hoosier Noir is a magazine that I edit, and I'm published in issues 1 and issues 4. That was before I took the magazine over. So I've got some crime stories in there, and the best one, if you want to check me out, but then also like a great collection of other crime writers, is an anthology called Trouble No More, which was inspired by the music of the Allman Brothers. There you'll get I've got a story in there, but then you'll also get Mark Westmoreland as the editor of it. You'll get Bobby Matthews, S.A. Cosby, just a number of great crime writers who are all packed into this anthology. So I would highly recommend going to check that out.
Very cool. All right. Well, let us know when you find a home for that story so we can all go see how it ends.
Definitely. I will be happy for that. And then one last plug is that by the way I met James was on the Dark Waters podcast.
Yes.
He was a guest on our podcast. And we have an anthology that's scheduled to come out later this year. So please, everyone, still pay attention for that one. That's not any of my writing, but it's packed with great stories as well.
Well, we'll get the link for the Dark Waters podcast up in the chat soon too, because it is a fantastic podcast. It's essentially deep dives with an author, and I know when I was on, we went down a lot of dark rabbit holes.
Yeah, very much so. But it was great. It was
very free flowing and conversational. It's good stuff. So
yeah.
All right.
Well, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. We'll have you back at the end. You can tell us more about what's coming up.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. I am happy to introduce our next reader, MAURICE BROADDUS. MAURICE is an award-winning Afrofuturist and librarian. He's had over 100 short stories published in such places as Lightspeed Magazine, Black Panther Tales from Wakanda, Out There Screaming, Asimov's, Weird Tales, Magazine of FNSF, and Uncanny Magazine. With more than a dozen novels in print, his latest include Sweep of Stars, Breath of Oblivion, Unfadable, Pimp My Airship, and The Usual Suspects. Learn more about MAURICE at mauricebroaddus.com. Welcome, MAURICE.
Good evening, everybody. I think I'm going to read a short excerpt from Chapter 1 of Breath of Oblivion, which just came out this past Tuesday. It's pretty much a jump-on point, so hopefully it'll be self-explanatory. We regroup, and once we're ready, we take the fight back to the Interstellar Alliance and finish what they started. Epic Rose stared into the blackness of her viewport. So many stars, so much potential. She chewed on her lower lip. Her crew had to adjust, learn who they were and what they were going to be about. They had to mourn, they had to heal, and it would be a long, difficult journey. It's gone. As she monitored the incoming reports, Epic Row walked towards her seat on the command deck. She churned her new title, Captain, over in her mind. The Reapers were in a state of transition from Hova Gebetto to what, she wasn't sure. This was a new journey for all of them, and they'd already been through so much. Their mission started as a military drop onto an uncharted world, followed by military skirmishes, a first contact scenario with the Mestizo, and the loss of the squad's captain, Fela. No, that cleaned up the circumstances to something nearly clinically pristine. The brutal and public decapitation of their leader, their friend, left the entire unit scraped and raw, and angry. They fought to escape their captors, only to discover the remains of the Oran Gate, their only way home, destroyed. What is? Having forgotten that their comlinks were active, Epic Row turned to see Robin Townsend picking out her afro puffs. It was the first time she'd had an opportunity to tend to her hair in days. The look in her eyes declared that she was ready to stab somebody for some shea butter. The Oran Gate, all of it. There's barely any debris left. The Hova were Muungano's specialized offensive regiments, both shield and spear. The elite warrior protectorate, the closest thing Muungano kept to a standing military. As Hova, they were more of a community within the community, their own cohort within the Muungano space. Believing that they had failed their mission, her unit renounced their office, now calling themselves the Reapers. But the memory of hierarchy remained, and they still looked to her for leadership. Residual energy signatures are all over the place. Chandra L. monitored the scans. She rarely spoke. Becoming a member of the Hova was akin to becoming a living sacrifice. The majority, overwhelmingly women, they underwent genetic modifications. Sometimes, like with Chandra, cybernetic enhancements also. She possessed a neurological Maya implant. A portion of her brainstem had been excised to accommodate it. Bioplastic covered parts of her skull and cheek. She'd been modified to be a living radio, a way for command to relay orders to them. But now there was no command in her ears, only her and Maya. The other Reapers could only wonder what conversations in her head might be like. Weapons discharged, military class. Could it have overwhelmed the gate, created a feedback cascade? Epic Row asked. uncertain. How's the ship? Epic Row remained in vigilant appraisal of their commandeered vessel. It bore an insignia, but no name. Though the ship was little bigger than a crawl, the command deck was a largely open space with 2 stations near the front, about the size of a rendezvous. The vaulted ceiling streamed with lights, the material of each rafter a translucent metal that refracted the beams into kaleidoscopic art. Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out the rest of the controls. Robin took her station at Navcom. I hope you ain't over there just pushing buttons, Epic Row said. Do I look like a Nitra? The controls responded to her gestures. Hard light structures moved like Funkentele-controlled nanobots. Comms, transmitter, receiver, sensor array, some sort of a quantum slipstream engine. Slipstream? I thought that was just theoretical. And not according to these readings. That's... Epic Row's voice trailed off as she gestured toward the screen of the body of the ship. Enlarging the image, 2 figures bobbed near the surface of the hull in EVM's nav suits. And what are they up to? Painting over the insignia on the ship, Robin said. What? She asked, but waved herself off. Never mind. I'd ask who authorized that, but Anitra. Dare I ask why? So that anyone we encounter knows who they're dealing with now, Anitra Gouveia shouted. Unadulterated joy fueled the bombast of her voice. She reveled in life, whatever that might look like, taking it on her terms. It's what made her so devastating as a Geppetto. She fought for her sisters. She fought for life. So painting the letters LHS, strength, health, life, health, strength, on their ship made perfect sense. Wait, who? The aliens, Anitra said to Ellis, no offense. Am I supposed to be offended? Ellis Olinger asked. After the HWA secured their people and dispatched the agents of Cohen, the Interstellar Alliance's version of the HWA, they've been terrorizing them. Ellis opted to travel with the Now Reapers in the hopes of bringing the war back to the Cohen. Not yet, Robin warned, but brace yourself, she's just getting warmed up. Look, we're in the home territory of the aliens, and I'm not down for any anal probe nonsense either, Anitra said. Literally, we are the aliens in this scenario, Robin reminded. Look, no, but stuff. Anitra shook her head and batted away the imaginary probes. Man, you a daggone fool, you know that? Robin shook her head. Although, Captain, I hesitate to say this, but Anitra raises a good point. So I done told him, Anitra echoed. No, let me rephrase that. Anitra has inadvertently stumbled into a notion that we should discuss further. What's that, Epic Row said? Our first contact protocols. A spoken word artist in her former life, Robin could have been anything. A master teacher at the Thamai Academy, a ranked battle poet, or a member of the griot circles with her skills. Everyone, let's convene in the command deck in 10 minutes. Epic Row clasped her hands behind her, with neither a shrug nor a sigh, content that her team was adapting, even embracing their new adventure. They were their own, often wandering village, but they were always home as long as they had their sisters. I think I'll stop there.
Thank you so much. That is great. All right, I have a question right off the bat.
Sure.
When it comes to aliens and extraterrestrials, why does it always come back to probes?
I think when we think about the existential threat that aliens might represent, probes is probably high up there on that list.
Yeah, but I love that you flipped it around this time. That's great.
Right.
So is this part of? Oh, go ahead, Carol.
I was just going to say, I think that's also something that can, get everybody's attention. Let's just put it that way.
Right.
And is this part of a series?
Yeah, so this is from the opening chapter of Breath of Oblivion, and Breath of Oblivion is a book 2 in my Astra Black series. Mm-hmm. And so it's basically an Afrofuturist tale taking place in the about 100 years in the future or so, with this Pan-African intergalactic community. So we have, and this follows 3 major storylines. So we got one group of folks in the Muungano community is one of their leaders has been murdered, and so the transition of power is occurring. So there's a struggle for that, as well as dealing with Earth and the politics of Earth and Mars and things like that. There's another storyline that follows a generational starship that's off doing research in the far end of the solar system. In this universe, starships are powered by jazz music because Actually, that's a full stop because.
Yeah.
And then we have the HWA unit, which they were exploring the other side of a natural, what they thought was a naturally occurring wormhole, but some things have unraveled during the course of their adventures, leading to them being stranded on the other side of the galaxy at the moment.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
There's a lot to it. Sounds like some really rich world building and science fiction concepts. Fantastic.
Right.
It's like it's a sweep of stars or something.
Or something, right?
Yeah, the first book in the series. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool.
Well, so book 1 is A Sweep of Stars. Book 2 is Breath of Oblivion, and book 3 is going to be called A City Dreaming. And all 3 titles are from a Langston Hughes poem called Stars.
Oh, I didn't realize. I enjoyed Sweep of Stars, but I didn't realize that's where it came from. Oh,
Yep.
Cool. Cool.
It's a nice reference.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I guess one thing, I mean, you describe in your bio yourself as an Afrofuturist, and that, I don't know, would we call that a genre or a movement? But Afrofuturist fiction seems to have become like a powerhouse in the last 5 or 10 years. There's just so much happening in that area.
Right.
What do you think is giving it that vitality?
Yeah. So, and actually, I didn't know I was an Afrofuturist until my first short story collection came out, Voices of the Martyrs. And so in that collection, I had stories divided up into the past, into stories of the present, stories of the future. And so, in fact, which sort of actually runs the span of my career, because there's a lot of horror stuff that takes place in the past, a lot of fantasy stuff in the present, and then obviously science fiction stuff in the future. And then when the reviews started coming out and they started referring to me, especially that last section, as me as an Afrofuturist, I'm sitting there going like, an Afro what now? And so, I mean, the term was coined in 1993, but it really seemed to have entered the pop culture consciousness when the Black Panther movie came out. And so then people were able to go, oh, Afrofuturism is Black Panther is that. And so, and then it just sort of caught steam after that. But my working definition for Afrofuturism is art through the Black cultural lens, but it's an intersection of like Black culture, technology, and social practice. So, and that's pretty much describes my writing, but also describes my life. So,
and I think Black Panther, probably the movie, was the thing that brought that to the masses, that idea of Afrofuturism.
Right.
And you got to write Black Panther. How was that? I
did. It was a really cool experience. It's a geek dream come true. I actually have a copy of Black Panther's first appearance in Fantastic Four on the far side of the room. I won't grab right now. But even when so there was an interview process for it. So Marvel schedules an interview with me to see, because they were narrowing down their list of writers, and so they scheduled a Zoom call and everything. And so the camera popped up, and right now I'm at home. And as you can see in the background, all my Black Panther pop figures in the background. But when I took the interview, I was at school, and it's my school office isn't decorated any differently. So, so when the camera turned on, they were like, "Oh, that's some great staging you did for this interview." And I'm like, "There's no staging. This is my life." In fact, at school, I had there's a couple paintings that were done by some of my students. I teach at a middle school. And so there were a couple of paintings. This is why I explained to Marvel. I said, when Chadwick Boseman passed, a lot of my students said, Mr. Broaddus feels a way about this. And so they started painting Chadwick Boseman portraits for me. And so, I have those up in my classrooms. I tell Marvel that story, and they're like, okay, yeah, our search is over. So let's talk about what this thing's going to look like for you.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's
really fantastic. I have a question for you also, Maurice. I know you do a lot of community organizing and a lot of support of folks in your area and other places and all, which is way cool. And one of the things I've read about is the Indiana Humanities. But I also see in the description of this book that you just read from, it says, in the slums of Indianapolis, the character works to free the children of the diaspora, blah, blah, blah. So I'm fascinated. You've tied these in together here. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how it feels to you? And
and so so a lot of the work, so a lot of this actually started from the work that I do at a group called the Kepler Institute. I'm their resident Afrofuturist, and and we do a lot of basically just leadership development work. We work a lot with young people and train them into using like entrepreneurial experiences to become leaders, which can be terrifying if you're a young teen or 20-something-year-old. So like, oh, by the way, we're going to turn the keys over this multi-million-dollar organization over to you. Go. What are you going to do with it now? So it's a lot of that sort of testing. And working alongside them, it's terrifying, but it's also, no, we're not going to let you crash the starship. So, so don't worry about that. But, we're going to use these sort of experiences. And frankly, we encourage failing because that's how we learn. So we're just not going to let your failures crash the whole ship. And so how the series started was I started asking the question, hey, what does it look like if we win? So, or in fact, what does it look like when we win? How about we ask that question?
I like that.
And we're able to establish and create a culture and a society on our terms. What does that look like? And so I'm now asking the young people, hey, how could the education system look like? And asking some of the elders, what could a new economic or political system look like? What the cultural priorities of such a world be? And by literally just talking to my neighbors for like about a year and a half, that was how I did the research for the world building for the book. And so a lot of it is, this place of imagining possible futures and imagining this future world, but also critiquing the very, very real present that we live in, the very real circumstances that we find ourselves in. So I'm very much critiquing the systems we're currently under, very much critiquing some of the politicians we're currently under. Just trying to live in the moment and explore from that space.
Excellent. Oh, it's very fun.
Which also means I get called into the principal's office pretty often by some of the local politicians. That happens.
Do they come over the loudspeaker and say, the mayor would like to see you now, sir?
Right, the mayor would like to see you. Please come down to the downtown office. Things like that.
That's a badge of honor.
I absolutely I do.
Yeah, well, maybe if you have to do detention, at least you can get some writing done. So that'd be good.
And that's the way I look at it. Y'all are just giving me more fodder to write about. So knock yourselves out.
So, as a writer who's worked in multiple genres, it was interesting talking to Nate about kind of his experience doing different genres. What has your writing journey been like, moving through horror, science fiction, and other things?
Yeah. It's so basically I start from the space of like, I write what I want to write. I write for me. So I'm always going to write for whatever's on my heart, whatever I feel like exploring, I'm going to write for me. And then if I choose to try and get it published, then I'm writing. Then it's like, then I'm trying to be read. But being read is never my first concern, which is a weird place to. Well, no, it's a great place to be actually. And so one of the things I realized, I've been at this for like, 20, 24 years, 25 years, something like that. And so like a big, like the first, probably the bulk of the first half of my career was me as a horror writer. And then the last decade or so, I've been exploring other genres pretty diligently. But one of the things I realized was that when I'm writing horror, I'm writing from a place of anger. And so I'm angry at, either the oppressive systems, where we find ourselves in history, actually the whole weight of history, and there's plenty of horror in history to write about. The circumstances we find ourselves in, I'm exercising this anger that is in me. But when I'm writing science fiction, I'm writing that from a place of dreaming. So I'm dreaming about possibilities. I'm dreaming about potentialities. I'm dreaming about, what comes next in terms of the work, in terms of the culture, in terms of, the systems. So, and I like both those spaces to be operating from.
It's interesting. So finding the different genres allow you to channel different feelings and outlooks. That's
absolutely.
Yeah, that's amazing.
In fact, I've been exercising. A lot of my crime stuff has been I've been exercising mostly through my middle grade. I've been writing middle grade detective novels.
Oh, cool.
Also, but partly one because I love crime fiction and I love the idea of teenage detectives being thrown into the thick of real world situations and middle schoolers trying to figure things out and navigate those worlds. I always love that, but Oh man, lost my thread there. But yeah, but I mean, I just love crime fiction, and love getting it out through that lens of middle school. Oh, and plus the whole when my students find out that I am a writer, if they start looking me up, last thing I need is them finding like Orgy of Souls by Maurice Broaddus, James White. So it's like, and here you go, kids, a middle grade book. So
Mr. Broaddus, can you come to the principal's office?
Can you come to the principal's office? Yes, all over again.
It's really cool that you're writing stuff at the level that they are that they can read. So I think that's really cool.
Absolutely. Well, the Black Panther book has given me unending street cred with middle schoolers. So
I'm sure.
Yeah. I can imagine. Not just middle schoolers, sir. I mean, I'm a little older than that, and hey, yeah, that's really cool. Now, it's interesting what you were mentioning about horror feeling this way and science fiction feeling that way, but something like, like the Event Horizon movie is science fiction.
Movie.
Yeah. Science fiction, cosmic horror, like mixed together. Do you see yourself crossing the streams ever?
I had a story in Weird Tales magazine, I think 2 years ago. And it was a crime story. It was a murder mystery. It was a hip hop murder mystery.
Yes.
That was re-examining reimagining one of Lovecraft's stories.
Oh,
so I'm definitely because as I sit around as I sit around as a Black author, I often wonder, man, what would H.P. Lovecraft want me to write next? And so that's what I came up with.
Yeah. Oh, that's terrific.
very cool.
What about all your gaming? I think you're involved with a lot. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. I end up doing a lot of. It also adds to the street cred of Mr. Broaddus. That was the first time my students realized I was a writer when they found out I was a consultant for the video game Watch Dogs 2.
Wow.
When I told that to, I literally had just whispered that to one of the students in front of me, and then all of a sudden he like stands up in his chair, like, everybody be quiet. Mr. Broaddus is speaking now. I'm like, okay.
Oh, that's awesome. Wow.
But yeah, I've done video game work. I've done a lot of role playing work. I think I did I did a Marvel superheroes game. Oh, Leverage, Firefly. Those some of the role playing games I've worked on. Done a lot of media tie-in stories and things like that. So yeah, I keep and then I go to Gen Con every year, and and that's again just because at the end of the day, I'm a geek, I'm a fan. So I'm always
geeks are us, yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I was asking Jonathan at the beginning his interest in movies and film and how that affected his writing. But do you think that the gaming has affected the way you write, or does the way you write affect your gaming approach?
You know what? What's interesting as far as that goes is being a game writer had a great impact on my writing practice.
Oh.
And so, like, one of the things. So, I mean, I'm an author. Which means sometimes I can get pretty precious about my words and everything. But when you're doing game writing, no, you don't get that luxury. It's like, here's the assignment. We need blah, 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 5,000 words for Leverage. And that's due. We'll give you a day, 2? That should be good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
here's your pot of coffee, sir. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And so that was really, and it sounds paradoxical, but that was really great for my practice because it allowed me to get out of my own head and just like, hey, you know what? I just got to put the words down. And then in some ways, it teaches me how to write quicker, to deadline, and still not sacrifice quality as as part of the process. And so, but largely what that means is getting out of my own way. Which turns out is a big part of my writing practice and what slows me down the most. So like, oh wait, if I just remove that part of it, suddenly this whole process goes a lot quicker.
Oh, that's funny. That is funny.
So for readers who are new to your work, where's a great place to start?
I tend to suggest Pimp My Airship.
Okay.
That always feels like the if I do say so myself, that's the quintessential Maurice Broaddus book. It has a lot of the themes I tend to wrestle with. I admittedly wrestle with a lot of pretty deep themes, like in Pimp My Airship. I'm going to talk about over policing, mass incarceration, redlining, and things like that. However, it's also one of the most fun romps you'll ever have. In fact, the main hero's journey with my dude Sleepy is because every hero has to have a goal, and in this case, his goal was my dude just wants to get high, and I won't let him. It's just a series of escalating antics keeping my dude from getting high, and that pretty much forms the crux of Pit My Airship.
I was in college in the 70s. I completely understand that. Yes, so
There you go.
that's all right.
Fantastic. All right. Well, Maurice, thank you so much for the reading and for taking some time to chat with us. We're going to invite Jonathan and Nate to come back on, and we're going to talk about what everyone has coming up next.
All right.
Cool. This is where everybody's TBR pile goes crazy,
I do want to say to Jonathan that the white van urban legend made it as far as Long Island, because that was a thing when I was a kid here too.
Yeah, it was really the deal. It was East Coast. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have to make a correction. And this is how nervous I was at the beginning of this, and also as a purveyor of too many black shirts. This is not fucking Martin. This is
it's an awful lot Malcolm McDowell.
Delete. Edit.
I should not have asked you questions that were off the cue. Sorry.
What I will say on the white van note is that for the East Coast, it was an urban legend. For the Midwest, we had the real thing. We had John Wayne Gacy. So
you win.
Not a point of bragging, just a cruel acceptance of reality.
That's
I'm not going to try and fight that one. No.
Yeah, no. That was fun to learn about.
Yeah. And Nate, I just wanted to say I loved your story so much. I wrote a piece about Bessie, the Lake Erie cryptid. Which is it was so much fun. I turned it into a love story, of course, but couldn't help myself.
I was going to say, like, Lake Erie has its own creepy phenomenon, like all over the town, and then like also the college where I went, it just has like its own collection of ghost stories, like weird ghost stories, like. For the campus, it used to be a one building campus that was all women, and the teachers and their children sometimes lived on campus. There was a fire on the third floor of the main building, which is now called Old Main. However, after the fire, there was a student who had been burned, and they found out years after that student had left, and I think had passed away, they couldn't put mirrors up on the third floor. And the reason why is because every single time they would put a mirror up, whether it's in a bathroom, whether it's in an office, it later got turned into an administrative building, the mirror would always be shattered, and not like broken like it had fallen on the ground. It would be shattered in a spiderweb pattern like someone had punched it. Because what they think is that the ghost of this student haunts the third floor of that building in particular and fractures every single mirror. And to this day, you go to that campus, you cannot find a mirror on the third floor of Old Main.
And maybe because they were burned and didn't want to see themselves in the mirror. Okay.
That's exactly why. Yeah.
Okay. There we are.
Fascinating.
Oh my goodness. So
that's why I write horror.
Yeah. So what's coming up for everybody? What's the next thing y'all are working on? Jonathan, you've got this ghost thing coming out now. Yeah. I mean the clowns. I said the wrong word.
Yeah. The pop story for Fear of Clowns, but I have a story called To What Do We Owe This Pleasure that's coming out in an anthology called Long Division, edited by Michael Bailey and Doug Morano from Bad Hand Books, and I'm super psyched for that one to come out.
Cool.
That should be December 12th.
Cool. Oh, that sounds awesome. Yeah, you're hanging out in good company, sir.
Yeah.
Just like here.
Well, I'm here with you guys. Yeah.
What's the theme of that anthology? It's not math, is it?
Long Division. Oh,
yeah.
Jesus. I'm slow.
Give you a second.
I can't take jokes.
Well, I was joking, but also seriously asking, what's the?
It's Long Division. Yeah.
No, wait, really? The theme is mathematical?
No, because there was a math themed one. Yeah.
It's about division. It's about division in the country.
Okay. So social division is the theme, and Long Division is a great title. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Cool.
a good title. Well, it got
Sorry,
art. It's
sorry to
really-
confuse you, Jonathan, but I feel like if you thought you were wearing a Martin shirt tonight, that
I know.
the deck was stacked against you.
Yep. Just twirl me around and put me to bed. Thanks.
It's been a month. Let's just say that. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh. And Nate, what should we be looking out for coming from you?
So we just took the latest submissions for issue 7 of Hoosier Noir, which is a magazine focused on crime fiction located in Indiana or happening to people from Indiana. So I'll be editing that up and sending that out hopefully within the next month or so.
And pardon me for asking. So you're the editor of that, is that right? Or one
Yes,
of the editors?
yes, I am. I took it over from a guy named J. Travis Grunden, who piloted it for the first 4 issues,
Oh, cool.
and then gave it to me. And I've been doing my best to be a good editor for it over the past few issues. And issue 7 will be the latest one. So hopefully we're going to have that done by this year. The latest issue 6, that came out in March of this year, and has some great stories in it.
Okay.
From folks like Sherry Held, and then like a few other great Indiana authors.
Cool. Well, I need to apologize because I put a comment in the chat saying that you have a story in there, but I said it wrong. You're the editor. I'm sorry.
I do have stories in Hoosier Noir, but it's in issues 1 and issues 4.
Okay.
For other stuff that like I may have published soon, I'm finishing up a novel that I'm hoping to shop around in the next year. Hopefully, it'll be. I'll get some traction on it, and that's a crime novel, but hopefully it'll get some good traction. And then the other thing that I've got currently, so as I mentioned before, I co-host a podcast called Dark Waters, where James was a guest. And Jonathan and Maurice, if you guys would like to come on, we'd be happy to have you. It's a great conversational podcast, but we also have an anthology that the second volume of which is we just finished editing and we just sent the submissions out for it. We've got some great authors for it. We're hoping to have that out before the end of this year. And that's got stories that range from crime to sci-fi / horror to a lot of horror. Basically, it's anything that's dark and twisted. We love it. So we've got some absolutely fantastic authors for this next issue that's coming out. So
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, Maurice, I know your book just came out.
Right.
So
And
I don't know
if
we might be pressuring you to tell us about something else to look out for down the road.
So yeah, and this was my 3rd book that came out this year.
Whoa. Whoa.
And so I had, but I had no short stories come out this year, and actually, short stories are my first love. And so next year's a bit of a reversal of that. I think I have a dozen short stories coming out next year.
Wow.
The two of the ones I'm really excited about. I mean, I'm excited about all of them. Let me say that I'm excited about all of them. But the two of interest would be, I have a story. There's a Captain America Sam Wilson anthology coming out in the spring. Again, I'm about trying to get that street cred with my students, and I knew I was due to re-up, and that'll get me there. And then in the late summer, I believe, The End of the World as We Know It, the Stand anthology comes out, and me and Wayne Brady wrote a story for that one.
Very cool.
Cool.
That's gonna be amazing.
So is the book about this thick? Probably. That would be
I
appropriate, right?
believe it is.
Yeah.
I saw that table of contents, and it's like a who's who. I'm like, oh, daggone.
Yeah, you're the one hanging out in the good company.
Right.
Cool.
So if you're writing Sam Wilson, Captain America, I have to ask, have you gotten a sneak peek yet?
No, not yet.
Oh.
Yeah, my geek dreams only extend so far, apparently.
I was going to say, you're living a pretty awesome geek dream as it is. Like,
Right,
the stories you get to write for, like,
Right,
oh, yeah.
I am not complaining. I am not complaining.
Yeah, we'll put that in the footnotes on YouTube. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, that's cool. Jim, what about you? What's coming up for you? Or you have something new out? Yes.
Yeah. Well, the new anthology I edited, Where the Silent Ones Watch, just came out in October, featuring stories inspired by or set in the literary worlds of William Hope Hodgson. And I just wrapped up about 6 weeks of promoting it online and in person with a visit to Vortex Books and Comics in Columbia, Pennsylvania, which is a fantastic shop. And I'm glad that I don't live closer. My wallet would be
It's an expensive place to visit.
So much cool stuff there. But if you're in that area or just visiting that area, definitely check it out. Brian Keene and Mary Sangiovanni are the proprietors, and it is probably the best stocked horror book section I've seen in any bookstore, because they know the genre, and lots of other good stuff too. But other than that, what do I have coming up new is a little bit uncertain. Well, actually, one related thing, I just wrote the introduction for a new illustrated edition of The House on the Borderland by William Hope Hodgson. House Press. They're putting out a nice hardcover illustrated by K.L. Turner, and I got the opportunity to write the intro for that, which was a lot of fun because I love that book.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Oh, that's exciting.
That is
How about you, Carol? What I know you have something very, very close to.
Yes, indeed. I have a new anthology out called Discontinue If Death Ensues, Tales from the Tipping Point. And this is basically, we call it stabby feminist horror. The idea is that after so much abuse of the environment, and there's been some power shifts coming here. So, it's the 5 women who were nominated together for the Stoker Award a few years ago for short story. And it was the first time all of us were women. You know, we made history with that. So we got together and we wrote stories from Lee Murray in New Zealand and Kyla Lee Ward in Australia. And Anna Taborska and I were the co-editors, and she's from London, and Cindy O'Quinn is in Appalachia. So we've got sort of a different take on this from all around the world. It's kind of fun. So, did I freeze a little bit? Am I back?
A little bit,
yeah. I think my computer may have a few too many tabs open. I apologize. You know how that happens, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Cool. So that's neat. And also coming up next month, we have some new stuff. I have another anthology, of course, because you can't just do one or, 4 at a time like I was just doing. But Dark Spores, Stories We Read After Midnight is coming out in early December. And we're going to do a special presentation here on using our Galactic Terrors StreamYard system on Tuesday, December 3rd. And we're going to have some folks come on and talk about mushroom horror and what inspired them to be talking about spores that creep under your skin and things that control you and spread through the damp darkness underneath the leaves. Yeah. So that'll be a lot of fun. So looking forward to that.
Awesome. And we'll be back with our regular Galactic Terrors transmissions on December 12th. Correct. And have we firmed up our readers? I think we have Richie Narvaez.
Yep. And and we have Raymond as well coming on. So that's very cool. And
if you'd like to keep on top of the upcoming broadcasts, you can go ahead and sign up for our newsletter. And if you're newsletter averse, you can just click like and subscribe. And I think you just get an email whenever we add a new broadcast.
Yeah. Raymond Chira, I'm sorry I didn't say the name fully. Yes, and that'll be a lot of fun. So Richie, speaking of crime fiction and all sorts of dark things, Richie's awesome for that. So that's really cool. Yeah, so cool. Oh man, this has been so much fun. It's wildly different stories, but yet all really fascinating. So.
Thanks, everyone.
Cool.
It was fun.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing your stories and for the great conversation. And thanks to everyone who joined us tonight. If this was your first time with Galactic Terrors, we hope you'll come back for future transmissions and tell all your friends. Heck, tell your enemies. We'll talk to them too. We just want eyeballs. No.
And if you're in the Long Island area, come see us at Tiny Raccoon Books on Saturday. So that'd be really fun. And if you're not, just get in the car now. Yeah. Terrific, everybody. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, everyone.
Appreciate you guys.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.